Please excuse the kind of strange lighting to this video. This is just something I decided to do for fun. It's an idea I've had in my head for a little while, and right now it's 4:46 in the morning, really cold, and so I'm not going all out with the makeup and all that. I was like, I'm not putting on my contacts for this. But anyway, so I decided to finally make a video about Charles Manson in music, because if you know anything about the Manson case, Charlie's music was actually very important to him. And since the Tate LaBianca murders, there's been a plethora, so many, and still more to come, I'm sure, of songs, and just various things. But mainly I'm focusing on music that has talked about or mentioned Charles Manson in the crime sense. So the first video I wanted to make about this subject is actually about Phil Anselmo. Phil Anselmo is... Phil Anselmo has written about Charles Manson multiple times in his music, and I just stumbled across these references naturally, being a fan of a grand majority of Phil's music. It wasn't until I started reading about Charles Manson in 2019 that I noticed all of these references. And while some of these songs are more outwards, or it's more obvious with their references to Manson, not all of them are. Not so much. I feel that Anselmo has referenced the crimes and lyrics to songs that probably otherwise wouldn't have been about Charlie and the family. So first of all, I'm going to start with Pantera and the song Uplift, which is from Reinventing the Steel that came out in the year 2000. The most obvious reference to Manson in this song is the line, "No sense makes sense." This phrase is commonly associated with Charlie and has been talked about multiple times in various pieces of literature in many different books. The song references various things that the family has done, such as running into traffic, of course taking hallucinogens, and how Charlie was able to get many things in life just simply by asking. Another song from Pantera is Message in Blood, which is from their album Cowboys from Hell that came out in 1990. Offhand, this song doesn't seem to outwardly be about the Manson family, but when you read the lyrics and you know about the murders, it becomes more clear, at least it did to me. Of course, the title itself is a clue, Message in Blood, surely referencing the literal messages written in blood at the Tate and LaBianca crime scenes. And while this song or the references would technically include Susan Atkins and Patricia Krenwinkel, in my opinion, I've just always felt like this song seems to lean a bit more towards Patricia. As Anselmo wrote about a murderous problem, cryptic warning, and references the common phrase, sticks and stones. Now, this seems to be, the sticks and stones phrase is more like a play on words to the exact phrase, which is, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. This phrase seems to have been thrown out the window, or perhaps even proven right, I guess you would say, by the crimes. This line of the song reminds me of Abigail Folger, who was an educated, well-spoken, and at least bilingual woman who lived abroad and tried to bring social change during her lifespan. Folger's educated and eloquent background went out the window when Patricia Krenwinkel tackled her and then stabbed her to death. Message in Blood seems to look at the family as a group that were just like bad seeds, people that were doomed since childhood. I assume that this must have been what many people believed about the killers, that they must have been bad or evil since childhood, that maybe they were just bad from birth. In much of the literature I've read, normal citizens were so shocked that seemingly normal people like Tex Watson and Krenwinkel could commit such heinous murders. Like, well, The bad seed, though, is a common contention when trying to understand forensic psychology, at least when you look at arguments of nature versus nurture. Next, we'll move on to Down and the song Where I'm Going, which is from Down's second album that came out in 2002. This one isn't as obvious as others in the references to Manson, though Phil Anselmo does mention Charles Manson by name. The lyrics go, "Hateful and deserved, Charlie Manson's eyes are looking through you back to myself." The first three lines are also a reference to Manson, as Anselmo wrote, "Leave this part of yourself behind. I'm giving you back to yourself." This is something referenced by multiple women in the family, how Charlie gave them back to themselves. One example that comes to mind is how Susan Atkins said this very thing in her grand jury testimony. Susan stated that she felt like she was lacking somewhere, and Charlie gave her back a part of herself. I'm not sure if this song is referencing that exactly, the testimony, but it does show me that Phil Anselmo is well versed about Manson lore. Now we'll move on to Superjoint Ritual and the song Creepy Crawl, which is from their first album, Use Once and Destroy, that came out in 2002. The song's name itself is obviously a Manson reference pertaining to what certain members would do, which was an act called creepy crawling. This is referenced in books like Helter Skelter and Child of Satan, Child of God, and I believe just about every book has talked about this, but also Diane Lake's book mentions it. I believe Shirley Tex Watson's does, and potentially even Paul Watkins' books. So many books have talked about creepy crawling. This is what they would do is where certain members of the family would dress in black or dark clothing, then illegally enter people's houses at night. Some accounts claim that they would only move stuff around and eat stuff out of people's fridges. I believe Diane Lake's book said that they would eat stuff out of people's fridges. But others claim that they would steal. In Susan Atkins' grand jury testimony, she admitted to stealing money out of people's houses while creepy crawling. The song itself mentions Manson and looks at him from what I believe is an outsider's perspective. Creepy Crawl is written in a way that questions Manson, how someone who was 5'5" or 5'6" could be seen as a god. Yet, with a stare like Charlie had, to me, it's easy to see how some people could be so drawn to him. The lyrics seem to look at the drug use the family had, potentially a nod towards the news and many others that believed the heavy LSD usage may have contributed to Manson's followers becoming so brainwashed. That's the perspective with a lot of these songs by Phil Anselmo. To me, it appears that he couldn't understand why people would become so brainwashed and fall for Charlie's tricks, even after knowing so much of the lore. It's a question that I've thought about myself, and I know others included. The next song is Dressed Like a Target, which is from the album A Lethal Dose of American Hatred that came out in 2003. This song is more obvious in referencing Manson with lyrics like, "We're not hippies, we're slippies, like the Manson family." The Slippy reference is recalling something said about the family that's been talked about in multiple books. Manson would sometimes call them Slippies because they had slipped through the cracks of society. Despite being thought of and seen as hippies to the outside world, the family was a group of people who had in various ways had actually fallen through the cracks of society somewhat. I do agree with that. Forgotten and thrown out. And I mean not just the ones that were convicted. I'm talking about the mass group of people, because we also have to remember the let's say crime syndicate, so to speak, ex-cons that Charlie did also end up having at Spawn Ranch. Ironically, though, I truly feel like the most deserving of the Slippy title, other than Charles Manson himself, would actually be Diane Lake. In the song, there's the line, "To kill everyone is to love everyone." This is obviously another reference to the family where a lot of people believed that death was the same as life, and that by killing those in the Tate LaBianca murders, it was really an act of love, because the family was saving those people from themselves. Not everyone seemed to believe this philosophy, but to me it seems that the more fervently devout, like Patricia Krenwinkel, seemed to do so. To me, I really believe that Patricia believed this, because I believe it was her 1994 prison interview where she had said that she really believed that she said something along the lines of each stab brought the person closer to death, and it was just a very messed up mentality. It was a messed up mentality that to me shows how brainwashed she was. I recall reading that the murders were like a mercy killing before the so-called revolution was to start. It seems that the more fervent members, or some fervent members, truly believed of a violent revolution of some sort that was coming. The song seems to reference the family also as a symbol of rebellion. It was like showing the more normal areas of society that people will still fall through the cracks, and that they'll have some sort of disdain for the traditions of old. Interestingly, I have bought a shirt with art of this song, Just Like a Target. I actually wore it to the first ever goat horror show that I went to, and this was the one that they played with I Hate God in Denton, which was in April of 2023. After that show was over, I bumped into Jimmy Bauer, who has played in Superjoint Ritual and Down, and I ended up asking him, why are there so many Manson references in the music that he's played? And just quite simply, he told me that they found Manson interesting, which I completely understand. It also seems to be a pet topic for many people that I have met who are of the Gen X era, which to me also makes sense, as many of these people were kids when the crime happened, or they were born right after the crimes. I completely understand the interest of looking into a major tragedy or major crime that happened when you were a kid. I think that every generation has that in some way. Unintentionally, I actually met the artist to Superjoint's Slippy shirt earlier this year, which was about February of 2024. I was minding my own business when the artist saw me. We chatted a bit, and he told me that, yeah, Phil has always had an interest in true crime. It was really cool to meet the artist to a shirt that I wore, and he was honored to see someone wearing his work. In fact, I'm wearing that shirt right now. Let's see if I could show it. So, of course it's backwards because of my camera, but this is the Superjoint Ritual shirt with Charles Manson on it, where it says Slippy. Hopefully you could hear me. I actually genuinely like the shirt. It's really comfortable too. You know, there's two variations of the shirt on the, I think it's Housecore Records website. They've had this in their stock for a while, I believe, and so I'm not even sure if they have any left, but there's two variations where it's the one I have. That's the more kind of, I would say, cartoonish looking version of Manson. And then there was a version with a more realistic looking version of Charles Manson. As an honorable mention, I do want to, mention the song Revolution Is My Name, which is by Pantera, that also came out on Reinventing the Steel in the year 2000. To me, this song seems to be a nod towards the family, as the chorus mentions revolution. As this album already has a Manson-related song, I personally consider this one inspired by him too. A lot of it seems to stem more from the, of course, militant followers that I've mentioned before, who really did seem to believe in some sort of revolution happening, as mentioned before. Whether you believe the brainwashing, cult stuff, helter-skelter, Beatles aspect of it, I think that doesn't truly matter, because there are so many books that go against the race war theory with Charles Manson that to me you can see a lot of people still believed what he said, race war or not. Anyway, this song itself seems to focus more on Phil Anselmo and how he came of age during this time post Charlie and post the supposed revolution, the revolution that never happened. I see the song as someone who is looking inwards to find the power to bring a revolution or a new level, if you will, of change that must happen. The narrator seems to understand that without change, everything only ever stagnates. And while this is not comprehensive, this was just a small, fun list I wanted to do. I know I've surely missed more songs, as Phil Anselmo has more projects than I can even keep track of. I'm not sure if he'll ever write another song about Manson again. It's been quite a long time, I believe, potentially over 10 years. Will we see another Manson song from him again? I do. I think so. I really do. And I guess as some little Easter eggs, there were some pictures that I did want to talk about too that I found really interesting that show how much interest Phil Anselmo has had in the Manson family topic. There's a lot of older photos, mainly from the Pantera era of Phil Anselmo and his style, where you see him wearing Manson-related shirts. One shirt is of Phil with Manson's inmate number on it. This one I'm thinking of in particular, which of course I'll show, but it was just a simple kind of like denim shirt that had Manson's number on it. There is another shirt that he would wear. Not sure whatever happened to this. I don't even know how he came across this shirt, but it's of Charlie with his face from the album Lie, and the other pictures of the convicted family members. Typically, this shirt I've seen in pictures of him from Pantera. There might be a couple of them around the early Down era. There's another version of the Lie Charles Manson face shirt that Phil Anselmo had worn. This was also definitely from the Pantera days. This seems to be different from the one that has the pictures of the convicted family members on it. There's another photo that I've seen of Phil Anselmo wearing a Manson shirt where it's him and Pepper Keenan, and I'm not sure if this is technically Down or Pantera, but either way, this picture is of Phil wearing, I don't know what you call those shirts, that cargo kind of style from the early 2000s, where it's just simply Charles Manson's eyes, once again, from the picture that is on the Lie album. That most super famous picture of Charlie. There's another photo I found where Pantera era, and it's just another side angle of the kind of like helter-skelter Lie convicted felon photo. This shirt is also seen in a photo. I was really surprised when I came across this, of Phil was wearing this shirt while playing on stage, or while touring with Typo Negative, which kind of just blows my mind because Typo Negative is my favorite band ever. So I'm like, whoa, the whole, I guess you could say that the planets collided. When planets collide, right, there's the Typo Negative, there's the Phil Anselmo, and the Helter Skelter Charles Manson shirt. This shirt was also seen in a photo of Phil with the members of Slayer, where I guess Kerry King, I can't really see what it says. Kerry King was wearing a shirt that I think says smoke crack and worship Satan, which is pretty fair. And once again, another picture of this shirt with Phil and Dimebag. So that's part one of what I hope to make at least maybe a 3 to 5 video series on Charles Manson in music. There's definitely quite a few more bands that I can write about on this subject. just in the NOLA sludge area alone. In fact, believe it or not, Mike Williams from I Hate God is really, really into reading about the Manson family lore. So maybe one day I can make a video about that too. I'll have to talk to him about it, but I just think this is a very interesting topic to me, where there's not just people who grew up during this era after the crimes, right after the crimes had happened and the trials, but there's musicians that are interested in this. There's a lot of people that from different walks of life that you probably wouldn't expect have an interest in this topic. So I hope you enjoy this video. If you do, please like it and subscribe. I'm not the type of person to typically do this, but unfortunately, for whatever weird reason, YouTube doesn't really seem to care about retention. So a lot of people will watch these videos, but they don't subscribe. And if you don't subscribe, then unfortunately you just don't know when they ever come out. So if you like this, let me know. I enjoy doing stuff like this, and I love just reading the comments and talking to you guys. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to me. I really appreciate it. I'll see y'all later.